tell you where to go to put yourself in the know. No politics as usual, I'm really talking reform. Peace, love, and positivity we really put on. You know I do it for the people, cause we gotta push forward. Bear witness to a mind not defined by a politician. Bliss and ignorance, but take a stand and play your position. Gain an understanding when we talk, you gotta listen. Why you drawing those conclusions? Don't you see the bigger picture? Insane, but so real. Yeah, give me change that you can feel. Yeah, a dream we can't believe. Yeah, welcome to Knowville. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, guys? I appreciate everybody checking in with me. This is the Knowville Podcast Network interview series, and this is basically something where I interview people that have, fascinating stories or just atypical experiences. And today I'm speaking with Rashad Biggers. Mr. Biggers, if you don't mind, could you just introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, Rashad Biggers, like you said, from Lewisburg, Tennessee, and I'm currently a North American staffing lead for Google.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And you said you're from Lewisburg, Tennessee. How does a kid from Lewisburg find themselves working at one of the most well-known, internationally known companies that exist today?
I would never like to say luck, because it definitely wasn't luck, but it's just a string of random occurrences, basically. For me, it was basically football was the thing that kind of opened up most of the doors for me. That got me on the radar of a lot of schools, like succeeding in high school football. And then kind of growing up in that small town, you always heard the stories of different people that didn't make it. So, I had a lot of my heroes that, people thought they could be like NFL greats and all these things. And then Friday nights I'm playing and, they're on the sidelines, like watching, they're still here in this town. And I knew that was the thing I never really wanted to do. So for me, I had some people in my life, like my uncle had gotten out and saw different things, and he was in the Secret Service. So, and he always talked about the grades were the most important thing. So I always like to say I kind of overdid that to make sure that I didn't get stuck there and the grades weren't going to hold me back. So it's just really focusing on studying, and then football, and then everything else kind of happened. I didn't even know what the Ivy League was. It just kind of came to me.
Right, and that's one of the things that I think is so important, because you could have just as well went to say a UTK or UGA or Florida State. What was it about the opportunity, or I guess my question is did you recognize that you had this gift and that it could take you beyond just the normal state school or the normal power conference? What was your impetus to say, okay, I'm going to use this, but I know necessarily going to an Ivy League school as a football player isn't going to get you in the NFL? Or was that even something that you even thought about?
Yeah, I went to a lot of football camps and different things like that. And I knew my skill level. I knew I was good enough to play D1. I knew basically from talking to every coach that recruited me, I was just a little short, and I was smaller than they expected. Like I say, watching my film, I thought I was bigger. And I had the good fortune of having an older cousin that was playing at UT back when they won the national championship. He was on the team, and just hearing his stories of being up there and just how hard it was for him to work up the depth chart, and also knowing that as far as speed and all that, he was on a different level from me. So when all these schools are talking to me, and they really wanted me because I could get in on the academic scholarship. So I didn't have to actually take an athletic scholarship. And that's how most of those schools were kind of talking to me about it. They were like, oh, come on, be a preferred walk-on, all those type things. And so when I really started looking at it, I'm thinking about, okay, you go to a UT or Alabama or something like that, these dudes you playing with are just gigantic human beings who are going to be playing in the NFL. I didn't really think I was going to be playing in the NFL. It was going to be a real long shot. So do I want to spend 4 years of getting beat up every day in practice being a tackling dummy, or go somewhere where I can actually shine and still get a great education? So actually a little bit of my naivety is that I was actually thinking I was taking a step down going to the Ivy League. I'm like, okay, man, like, at least I can go up here. I can just ball out, maybe set some records, do all this. Not realizing that up north, most of the good players, if they have the grades, they gonna go to an Ivy League school instead of going to like the D1 schools. Like they aren't the popular ones up north. But yeah, I mean that was kind of my thing because I was in a small town and like football was everything. That it was really at first like a big football decision, knowing too, there's like, oh, Ivy League, like it's a good school, but like to me, like Vanderbilt also was an option, and so I was like, I basically chose it because of the football. I mean, I know I was going to go to a better school. Like I wasn't going to go to like, just a cupcake school. I wanted something that was actually going to hold some weight because I know I was going to need that. But yeah, even then I didn't truly have a grasp on like Ivy League and what that did. Like I'm telling you, even being recruited, I know they talk about, oh, it's a prestigious school. When their coaches are talking to me, I hear a lot of grown-ups talking about it. But my parents never really pushed me one way or the other. I think a little bit they were hesitant about me going all the way to New York City. So they were kind of like, hey, you go to Vanderbilt. It's only, an hour away and you're still close and get a great education. So I don't think it really set in for any of us until I actually got there, like the gravity of like the education.
I got you. And that's definitely something that shows your intelligence too, because I didn't even really think about the fact of you're weighing like, okay, am I going to be like the tackling dummy? Like, what's my best chance to, how can I put myself in the best position to succeed with what I'm doing? Having that forethought is something I don't know that a lot of people will have or even think about when they think about how people make these decisions to, go to different schools. I am interested though. I know you were saying that you sort of, you were good enough to do the D1, you had Vandy as the option. Did you ever think about HBCUs? I know at the time that probably wasn't such a big talking point. I know Jamil Hill had said that black athletes should probably start going to HBCUs as an economic and a cultural thing. Did you ever give any thought to any HBCUs, or was that just something that didn't even really occur to you at the time?
I mean, I got recruited by TSU. So, I mean, I did go up there to TSU and like when I watched the football game, it's like, kind of like my campus visit. I mean, not really considering it that much. I mean, honestly, a big part of it is just like, I don't know, my recruit trip, it was messed up. But like, I remember up there, like, we're supposed to have seats up there, like to watch the game. Like, none of my seats are there. Like, you know what I'm saying? It was just like,
oh, wow.
Like we just had, we basically just standing up in the like the breezeway, kind of watching the game and stuff like that. And I don't know. I mean, I just never really was a real option for me. I think nowadays, like having more information and different things like that, where like, could maybe connect with more recruits and different things like that, like, and then like coordinate it might have been something I'd be open to doing, like having known some people like going into it. But yeah, for me, I think it was also like a little bit of an ego thing at that point where I was already like almost going to just say, okay, I got to go D1. Everybody's expecting me to go D1. And I'm already taking like a step down, kind of going Ivy League. And I was like, but at least I got the prestige education. And going to the HBCU, like as far as in my head, 18 years old, status thing, it didn't carry that weight. So that's the reason that I didn't necessarily do it. But it's also growing up in my town where HBCUs weren't really, it wasn't a whole lot of black people around talking about HBCUs.
Right.
Like, it wasn't anything pushed like that. So I didn't, again, like being 18, not really even feeling that weight of what that would mean or what that could be.
Yeah, you just sort of weren't even really aware of what the significance of that could possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, man. I remember as a kid going to see Alcorn State, which was quarterbacked by Steve McNair.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually got an autograph from Steve McNair. And just being a dumb kid, I'm like, Alcorn State, I've never heard of this place. Like, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, I don't care about this autograph. Hindsight, But yeah, so that is definitely something that has got a lot more attention, especially when Jamil Hill did that article. So I was just sort of wondering if that was something that was even talked about, and to the detriment of us all at that time. Yeah, it's something that wasn't even really talked about that much, but I'm glad it's getting the shine that it's getting now. If you don't mind, could you just tell me, so coming from Lewisburg, making your way to the big city, what culturally was that like? Were you like scared, I guess is maybe not the best word, but like, so the stereotypes that you get living in Tennessee about what Manhattan's going to be, did those impact you at all? Or, did you find those to be true, or what was your experience there?
Yeah, no, I mean, it wasn't, I didn't really have that. I mean, also, you know me, but the people listening, man, I'm very confident in myself, so I'm not thinking you're going to throw me in any situation that I can't, like, handle it. Like, you throw me in the deep end, I'm going to swim. And so, it's even, like, in my head, like, I was just not going to D1 because I wanted to start early. Like, if you'd have sent me to, UT, eventually I would have been starting. Like, that's how I just thought in my head. So I wasn't intimidated about New York. I was like, okay, I want to go up here. Like, it's a new place, big city. Like, I'm just excited to see it. And it's also, again, like, I think the biggest thing I learned was, like, growing up in your small town and in your part of the world, you really don't have a grasp of how small your bubble is and how small your area is. And you tend to think that, like, through the things you see on TV and different random people you interact with that may have moved from another state, like, you feel like you have a grasp of the world. And that was the biggest thing when I got to New York and got to, like, the Ivy Leagues, that I'm like, yo, I don't know anything. Like, growing up in Tennessee, like, really and truly is basically black, white, Mexican. Like, that's it. Like, I go up to New York and all of a sudden I see a black dude look just like me. I say, what's up? And he's speaking Spanish. Like, throwing me off. Like, I like did not even expect that. Or just, just everybody's like from all these different places. And then there's all like these different like subgroups of people. And it's just every time you walk down to a different block, like all the street signs change to a different language, and, just all the smells and stuff are different. So I started to just really realize like how big the world was. And for me, it was humbling and it also exciting. Because it was just like, there was so much new stuff for me to learn that, like, I just didn't know existed. And now it's not like something like, oh, I'm watching on, History Channel or watching someone's like educational channel learning about another culture. Like, I'm literally living this. Like, the person down the hall from me, like, literally has just moved over from India, like from Punjab. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's where he grew up. So, like, when he talks about going home for break, I'm talking about going to Lewisburg. He's talking about going back to India. So, like, just the chance to learn all those cultural stuff, I think that was just really exciting. But it was overwhelming that first year. It was a lot of adjustments. And then, obviously, you're at an Ivy League school, like the level of education and what they expect as far as in the classroom. Like, I always talk about, like, for my first class, so just kind of give you an understanding of the difference of, okay, you can make the grades to get in, but what kind of education were you actually given? So in Lewisburg, we had a calculus class that you could take, like pre-calc, but they only offered it during fourth block, which was football, because they assumed that no football players are really going to be taking it. So I go through, didn't get to take pre-calc, go to college, and the lowest level math they're offering is Calc 1A. I'm in that class, and literally in the first 30 minutes of my first class, they've covered everything I've ever learned in math. Wow. And so, like, I'm lost. Like, I am so lost. Like, I was lost the entire year. And then, mind you, that you still got 20 to 25 hours of football. So that was more of the thing that, like, so consumed me for my first year or so being there. New York was just kind of a background. It was just like, that's happening, but I don't see any of New York. My entire world is within this 4 block of my classes and then getting on the bus to go uptown to practice. But, like, I didn't really feel like I lived in New York until probably mid-spring of being up there.
Right, and that's one of the things that's so crazy when you look at it. Like you were saying, like, all the math that you had ever learned was covered in that first 30 minutes. And it's like, okay, you were able to have other means academically to get where you are, and then you also had your athletic ability. But it's just like, you sort of feel bad because you're like, okay, these other people might have also had this opportunity, but like maybe they didn't show out as much athletically, so like they'll be relegated to this other place. It's just, I don't know, in my head, it's just sort of crazy how just this one chance thing happening, you know, puts you in New York City, and now you're sitting in a classroom that, per the educational standards of our state, you should be more than equipped to be in. But yet you see, obviously in other places, this is something that, you know, was seen as a must-do type of situation. But because you played football, the assumption was, oh, he's not ever really going to need this, so why even work it in for him to be able to do both, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, like that pre-calc class was just kind of like a throwaway one semester of the year we had this class because we got this little tiny group of people that might be interested in taking it. Right. And so, like, and then, like, you know, with funding and stuff at little schools like that, like, yeah, we don't have enough funding to have a teacher that teaches pre-calc like every semester and does all this stuff or whatever. So, like, it's kind of those situations of those areas. It almost it holds the kids back because it's like, you know, it's just not opportunity there for it. And then if you don't have like a platform like football or something like that, where, you know, my Ivy League coach up there. I mean, I know he's defensive coordinator. It was Bob Schutz. I mean, Mike Schutz, I think. What is his name? Yeah, Bob Schutz. Yeah, Bob Schutz was his name. But he was defensive coordinator at Tennessee and at Penn State. Well, that coach up there is trying to make a name for himself, so he wants to get some good players. And so when he sees I got the grades and stuff like that, like, they're going to come down and try to get players like me. You know what I mean? So it's like it was even in the Ivy League situation, like, even though academics are first, you still have that of, like, if I couldn't have really provided something for them, would they have come down to Tennessee to come find me and put the pressure around me to help me succeed in that situation? So, yeah, I mean, it's still like kind of the system still working, even though it worked in my favor. It was like, yeah, but I needed to be able to really provide something for them to give me that opportunity.
Right. And that's something else that talking about opportunities and things of that nature. So I know the cost of living in New York is drastically different than Tennessee. Was there some sort of stipend provided, or like how were you able to survive, I guess, in New York, like not having a job and, you know, because you can't work and play? So how did that work?
Well, they actually did let us. We could do work study since we weren't on an actual paid athletic scholarship. So what they do is they give us, so they don't give those, they give academic scholarships. So, and it's based off of your means. So basically they look at your family income and stuff like that. And then they create, like, if you beat the bar academically, they'll help you with financial support based off of, like, your parents, your income. But I mean, yeah, so we had meal plans that you would buy into or whatever, and then you could play a payment plan over the year, kind of into your tuition. And then also I did have a work study job my second year at the Columbia Business School. And so I did, I could do that, and it helped, like, offset a little bit of it. But basically, I mean, like, if there's every time like a holiday or something like that, and like the cafeterias and stuff like that are closed, like, yeah, no, people had to plan for that, because you can't just be, I mean, you got the little corner store, like the little
bodega.
Yeah, you go to a little bodega or whatever, like Chinese restaurant down the street, you can do that. But, like, not if you want to actually eat some healthy, good food, like, yeah, there were many options for that because at cost.
Do you think your experience would have been different? Well, obviously it would have been different, but do you think your experience would have been better if it was a situation where they actually did pay players, as some people have sort of talked about in the last couple of years? Do you think that system is something that does need to change, where players should be compensated for what they're doing on the athletic field for schools?
I think in my situation, it wouldn't make any difference. And the way I kind of look at it is that I'm a realist, and I'm playing like football and stuff. Like, I realize, like, hey, the better players going to get better advantages, and different people going to take care of them. Like, you know, if you're not that talented, if you're not bringing it in, then, like, yo, you may not get the same. So I get that. And so when I look at it, when they talk about paying the players, I think if you're in like a Power 5 conferences or in these conferences that had these TV contracts, like, yeah, they should get paid, because they're going to ask them to do a lot of things that are going to sacrifice their academics and different things like that to make sure that you can make this Tuesday night MAC game. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to do all those things. And for me, like, I don't think we really brought in the money like that that we would have got any kind of money made any kind of difference. But yeah, I mean, I know there's some players on our team that from like my background wasn't necessarily as hard as far as like income wise, but there was a lot of dudes on the teams that like they really came from some bad situations where, I mean, they couldn't afford to go home for Christmas break and stuff like that. Like nobody could buy a plane ticket and stuff for them. So like, yeah, if they could have got some kind of compensation on that, that would have been able to help them out, or at least to let the school just be able to say, okay, this is a situation. We convinced this kid to come up here from, I don't know, Louisiana and like New Orleans or whatever to come play football for us. And like, yeah, now we got this kid sitting up here for Christmas in the New York dormitory because he can't afford to fly home and we can't help him. Like, I think that's just dumb by the NCAA that, like, you can't just look at one-off situations. Like, if the school's got the money and the means to do it, to just help kids out when it makes sense.
Well, and that's something I never even thought of. So, like, how do they get up there? They paid their way up there, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah. You pay your way up, or like you fly up or fly back and all that stuff. Like, whenever you're doing that for like not for actual football, like, yeah, you pay all your own stuff on that.
Got you. But one of the things I think people don't really look at, and I get the argument that, okay, this kid's getting an education for quote unquote free, right? But like, you're playing football. Like, this is a very physical game. You could very easily get a hit and then you just don't walk right ever again. Mm-hmm. Or, you know what I'm saying? You can never bend this certain way, stuff like that are going to impact you for like forever. So I guess my question would be, like, with looking at it like that, even if this person has a degree, but they're going to be in constant physical pain, I just think there's something they should be offering as far as compensation. And maybe it's not something directly from the school. Maybe the NCAA itself has a fund that, you know, divvies these out to like specific teams, and then the teams appropriate it amongst the players. But it just seems like, honestly, it just seems like a system where it's like almost gaslighting. Like, oh, no, you do it for the love because you're an amateur and all this stuff. But then at the same time, if that's the case, then why don't y'all get amateur football coaches? You know, like, do it for the love, right? Like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, and that's the thing, too, that I think, like, a lot of fans miss out on. Like, obviously, like, me continuing to play at Columbia was because, like, I love the game, and then, like, you do build that camaraderie with your boys. And you know, it's almost like it's never like high school again, where high school is just so much fun. It's just like, man, just like the pure enjoyment. Like, you got to college, it was a business. Like, the way the coaches talk to you, like the rigor and the structure of your days, and having to get in and watch film, do all that stuff. Like, it's a business. Like, it's a job. And so at Columbia, it was much more of people did it for the love, because once you're in, you can always just quit and you still get your education, because it's academic. So, like, you don't have to keep playing. And there's actually a lot of people that use it to get in, and then they'll just quit. So that's why, like, people who play 4 years at Columbia, like, get celebrated, because, like, you actually committed to the team, where some people you could buy out at any time. And so at these bigger schools, though, like these big D1 schools, like, there's no love for the school or any of that. It's like, dude, I'm here, man, I'm trying to do what I need to do, put enough on tape so I can get to the NFL. But, like, I don't care nothing about your pageantry and all that stuff. Like, yeah, that's kind of cool and fun, but yeah, I'm here to get what I can get out of this, and I can't get it here, and I'm gonna go somewhere else. Like, I feel that, like, those big time players, that's what a lot of them feel. Like, yeah, you still got to do, like, oh, I had 3 generations play here and they love it like that. But yeah, it's amateur because it has to be, but it's not, oh, we just love the sport. It's the pure love. Like, you don't put in approved 20 hours a week, unofficially 30-something hours a week into football or whatever, like, into like a side project or just a passion. Like, that's a job. That's your life, is what you're doing there. And then school works around it.
Right. I was gonna say, at UT, the only legacy family I'm aware of, I think, is what is it?
Kickers?
The Colquitt. They're all kickers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, you know, not taking anything away from kickers. Actually, the girl at Vanderbilt just made history being the first female kicker or female player for was it Power 5 conference or something like that. Which this has nothing to do with anything, but I really wish it wasn't because the other guys got sick from COVID. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like did they actually like it was just a desperation thing instead of like, oh, like she's really good, like we'll give her a shot. Like,
yeah. That just sort of like took me out of it. But I mean, you know, congratulations to her. That's something she'll have forever, and she can, you know, be like, hey, I was the first. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the end of part 1, our conversation with Rashad Biggers. Please tune in for part 2. It shall be forthcoming shortly.